All right, guys, good evening. All right. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks.
So I'm going to ask you guys, who are you?
And are you going to have to take the mic for this every time?
Well, you can answer this.
We are Doug and Lee Congdon. Is that all you wanted?
A little bit more.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are you guys young adults?
What?
Are you guys young adults?
We feel like we are.
Nope, we are not young adults. I'm 38. Lee is 33. This is the awkward time in between my birthday in May and her birthday in July where I'm 5 years older, and I hate that. So she's 33, but almost 34, so it's a four-year difference. Yeah.
Doug, what do you do here?
I'm the family ministry lead here. So I work with children's and students and young adults.
And we have 3 children, Darcy and Harvey. I said 3 without even thinking about it.
I know, it's awesome.
Darcy's 7, Harvey is 5, and then we have a foster baby who is almost 4 months.
Great. All right, guys.
Okay.
Beach or the mountains?
Actually, this is so funny because Doug's dad asked me this question at dinner the other night, and I skirted it because I could not decide and was like, well, what do you prefer? And asked everyone else at the table, and I didn't answer it. So
You never did come back?
no.
Very sneaky.
I think that I have to say mountains.
Beach.
Isn't it great that we're married?
Marriage is awesome. Vacations are terrible.
Opposites attract?
Yeah, something like that.
All right, road trip or flying?
If Doug is with me, then road trip. Otherwise, flying.
Before kids, road trip. Now,
This is
if I
valid.
get to fly somewhere and my family's not with me, love you. It is the best day ever. Like, I can go to the airport by myself.
It's like a vacation.
And
That's
then sit
true.
at the gate and do whatever I want in total silence. It's incredible. So
Yeah,
definitely
but
flying.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, early birds or night owls?
Again, opposites attract.
Yeah.
I am an early bird.
And I am a night owl for sure. Yeah.
All right, this is the hard one.
Okay.
Hard shell or soft shell tacos?
Oh, man.
Lee asks this
really
question
hard.
whenever she does Mexican. She asks everybody in the family, and I would say the answer changes
Yeah.
a lot. I randomly prefer hard shell now.
I think I go hard shell, too.
Last couple of times. Don't
Yeah.
know why. Even though after that first bite, it's basically like you are having to remake your taco every time with all this stuff.
It's a lot of disrespect for the street tacos.
Yeah.
All right, this is a fan favorite of mine.
Okay.
How do you cook a marshmallow over the fire?
We are the same in this.
Yes. Till it's light brown all over. You just hope that it doesn't
Thank
fall
you. Yes.
in.
There's only one way. This is the way. Yes.
That was the correct answer. Very proud. All right, what is your favorite hobby?
I didn't see this.
Lee
I didn't
doesn't-
prep for this.
Lee doesn't believe in hobbies. She doesn't have any.
That's not true.
Golf would probably be my favorite one. Again, that's become more my favorite one as I got older and my body is broken down, and golf is the thing I can do probably the best now.
I like to run, and I really like doing puzzles, which makes me sound so nerdy.
Puzzles, there we go.
So
That's
cool,
a hobby.
because I am like Amy in that.
Running is like the worst hobby option you could choose.
I like reading too.
Yes, there you go. Puzzles and reading, those are great hobbies. Yeah.
Those are great ones.
Yeah,
Doug, I like the golf.
thank you. You're going to make a great old lady. You're like halfway there. Yeah.
I'm not even that introverted.
All right, what is your Enneagram and your wing?
I am a 3, wing 2.
Yeah?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'll talk to you two later.
I am a 7 with
No wing. He doesn't have a wing.
Yeah.
He's just fully 7.
Full on 7. I don't believe in wings. Yes.
Doug, there's a little bit of wing 8 in there.
Oh, just in saying that. You're right. Okay.
Just a little bit.
You're right. I shouldn't have said that. I'm anxious about having said that. So wing 6 there. So we're just covering it all. Okay.
Got healthy wings?
Yeah.
All right, least favorite chore to do?
I mean, besides cleaning toilets, which I think is everyone's least favorite, I really dislike mopping.
Oh, nice. I thought you were going to say dusting. 'Cause
I
know you
also
hate
dislike
dusting.
that.
You hate dusting, yeah.
I don't really like the chores thing in general.
And TBH, this is not how I would want anybody else to do their marriage, but Lee basically does all of the chores.
So we can talk more about that later.
My least favorite chore that I do, I do one chore. It's vacuuming, and I do it because we bought a new vacuum, and I think it's awesome. So I love using it. That's it. That's all.
You do that. You do outside stuff.
Yes. If those are called chores, those things.
Yeah.
What is the nicest thing a friend has ever done for you?
For my 18th birthday, do you think this is the nicest
Yeah, it's a
thing?
great answer.
I probably have a better answer that's like deeper, but this is the first thing that came to mind. For my 18th birthday, a friend surprised me with like a whole day of surprises. So it started out at work, and I like was blindfolded and then put in a limo that I didn't know was a limo because I had a blindfold on, and taken to a spa and had my hair done, and they had like brought me clothes from my house to get dressed up, and then went to this dinner theater, and like friends just kept popping out from it, all these different places. It was really sweet.
Blindfolded the whole time.
Yeah.
That was great. The movie was
blindfold came off.
terrible. Yeah. I don't know. The first thing I thought of was probably because golf is my favorite hobby. 3 of my good friends went in for my 30th birthday and got me a new set of golf clubs, which is not cheap. So that was really nice.
That is really nice.
Yeah. I'm sure there are better answers out there, but yeah.
I need better friends. I need some new golf clubs. All right. How did you guys meet?
Good.
Yeah.
Great segue.
This is just gonna lead us right in.
Perfect.
Should we start answering the question, or should we just
We should
pray
probably
first?
start answering the question and then pray at a random point where it surprises everybody in the room.
Okay. Are you
Yeah,
sure?
I
Are you
know.
sure?
No, pray now. for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, we should pray now. Okay. Lord, thank you for this room of people. Thank you that you know every one of our hearts, and you know what we need. You know how we need to be encouraged. You know our struggles and our pains. And so I'd ask you tonight, Holy Spirit, to look at each of our hearts and minister to them. However it's needed, Lord. This is a talk about marriage, but it's really about you. So, Lord, would you lift up our eyes? Would you teach us about who you are tonight? Would you encourage us the way we need it? Would you convict us the way we need it? Would you teach us what we need to learn? We commit tonight to you for the glory of your name. Amen.
Amen. You're up.
Okay, so the question was, how did we meet? We met when I was born. Doug was, 4 years old.
That's the point that's the weirdest. The older you get, the more normal it becomes.
It's not that weird. And his dad actually officiated my parents' wedding, and his mom was my mom's matron of honor. And so our families were friends. And so when I was born, I'm pretty sure his mom, so my mother-in-law, was the first person to meet me outside of like my grandparents. And his little brother was my best friend when we were little. So we grew up here in Topeka, hanging out with each other all the time. This is a picture of our siblings and us, at least some of them. I'm in the middle in that terrible black outfit. I have no idea what I'm wearing. And Doug is next to me. Clearly taller, clearly older, clearly a goofball, which is, still true.
Yep.
So then I moved away when I was 7 and grew up in Minnesota. And when I was in college, Doug's mom called me to come and intern at Topeka Bible Church, which I did. And I had just had my heart broken by my first boyfriend. I was 19. And I kind of knew this reputation that Doug had as like a heartbreaker. And so I prayed.
Why is everybody laughing at that? Stop. Unbelievable. No respect.
There might be a couple people in this room who know someone who had their heart broken by Doug. I'm not going to name any names, but so I actually prayed before I came to intern. I wrote in my journal and was like, Lord, please protect me from falling for Doug Congdon. And he did. God is so gracious. I did not fall for Doug that summer. I actually fell for his best friend, and I started dating him, which, was unfortunate. So do you want to jump in here at all?
No, you're doing great.
No? Okay.
Finish it out.
So I'm sorry. I'm going to speed this up. Doug kind of liked me that summer, but of course I didn't know it because I was dating his best friend, and he just kind of was like, yeah, you go for it, man. And then best friend and I break up through the school year. I'm like talking to Doug on the phone, and we're friends. I'm in Minnesota in college. He's in Dallas in seminary. And one day I say to my best friend, I think I could marry Doug Congdon tomorrow. And she was like, what? What happened? And isn't he dating someone? And he was. So I stopped talking to him. And then he came home for the summer, and I was here as well, and was with his mom one day. And he was coming home that night, and she said, so, did you hear Doug broke up with his girlfriend? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't hear that. And then it was pretty much, like we saw each other, and it was like, okay, yeah, we both know.
Yeah.
So then we got married not that long after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you want to show?
So there we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, also, this is a fun part of the story. That best friend who I broke up with, he married Doug's ex-girlfriend before Doug and I even got married, even got engaged. So it's fine. It all is fine.
We're not that great of friends anymore. No surprise.
But they were in each other's weddings.
Yes, this is us at Gage Park the day of our wedding. So random that we chose Gage Park, but there we are taking pictures.
Yep. And those are our two biological children.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Still need to update that picture. So let's jump right in.
Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
That sounds good.
Okay. So here's the plan for tonight. P.S. We're going to try to move through. We had a ton of stuff. If you're talking about marriage, we obviously could do like a 6-week series and talk for 2 hours every night and be fine. That would
bore you guys to death. So we're not doing that
format. So we're going to try and speed through what we have for about 45 maybe minutes, and then try to leave 15 at the end for questions and answers. You guys have some slips of paper or Post-it notes or whatever with pens. If something comes up that we just run through and you'd like to ask a question deeper about it, please write it down, and then hopefully we can get to it at the end. So first thing we're going to do, though, is at your table, I would love for you guys to discuss this question. So what are you expecting from marriage? If you are married, all 4 of you in the room.
Then what were you expecting before you got married?
For marriage? So go. You have 5 minutes on this one. 5 minutes or less. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Talk fast.
No. After this part or whatever?
Like the whole thing.
Oh. Really great intro, though. Really great.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, here they are. They're just right there, and now we just got to do. We should have, like with the pictures. Here's. I don't know if this will help you, but real quick, you can look at it. It's kind of highlighted out. It's a little small, but I put stuff from the historical perspectives of marriage that we're about to talk about. Then the group question. I didn't go to service at all or do anything else. I just sat down here and did it. Then I have this contract versus covenant. We can.
That's great. So glad you have that.
Okay, so I did Ephesians, in the Ephesians 5, I just did 25 to 27. I don't know if that's okay. That was just the, so I can go back and if you want to change it, add it.
No, I can just paraphrase if there's something like that I need to refer to.
Okay. Everything else is normal. I put a quote here for this. I don't know if you want to use this, so look at that. I put happiness versus holiness, a quick thing. If you wanted to use it, you don't have to. Again, I was sitting there. And I did end. I did end with this quote that you thought about, that you mentioned maybe ending with. Yeah, that's the last one, if you want to use it.
The quote that I wanted to use was the one about the deep river, it being a deep river instead of a babbling brook.
Whoops. Well, that's the one I have. Sweet. Okay.
I mean, this one's really good too.
It is.
But maybe not
It's good.
because we're gonna end with like the hopeful. This is really beautiful.
Right, I thought that was what, when you said hopeful and beautiful, I picked that out on the page. Yeah, they're like, fully known and truly loved as well. It's a lot like being loved by God. It's what we need more than anything. It liberates us, humbles us, and fortifies us, our daily life. So it's kind of like that. Cool. I'll end with it. It'll just be way better than you're expecting. 7:03, perfect. How are we doing? Did everyone answer? Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, cool, great. So, no, that's good. So, just think about what you said there. Hopefully, you got some good answers there. So, stack that away for later because you're going to need it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we generally go through a couple books that we found the most helpful for us in marriage counseling and premarital counseling. The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller, which we'll be referencing a couple times tonight. And
That's kind of like the theological perspective on marriage,
And then this is You and Me Forever by the Chans, Francis and Lisa Chan.
which is more the spiritual perspective on marriage. And then we have a third book too. That's the practical perspective on marriage, Love and Respect, by Egerich.
Egerich. I don't know how to say the last name. Anyway, and these are two we'll be kind of mentioning tonight.
Yeah.
So the first thing that Keller does, which I like, and we're going to go through quickly here, is a historical perspective on marriage. There's really just two, so it's easy. Here they are. They're very small. Dare you to read it. All right. So from Bible time on to, I would say, the 17th century is what he says. The view of marriage is the classic view. It's a framework for a lifelong devotion and love, but specifically it created a social stability so that children could grow up and thrive. It was seen as the path for men and women to become civilized and mature. But, I mean, really, if you're thinking about agrarian societies, like marriage was the way to make sure that you could live and survive, and you wanted to have as many kids as possible so that the boys could take care of the land and you could sell the girls off with their dowries. So it's just a very, marriage is very functional to society, and there's a lot of duty, and this is what you're supposed to do when you grow up. Now, 18th, 19th century, when the Enlightenment came along, Keller says there was a shift. That shift is that the meaning of life is found in an individual's freedom to choose whatever fulfills them the most. So marriage then got redefined as finding emotional and sexual fulfillment and self-actualization. Now, I think we can recognize, just living in the West, that the ability to choose your own, whatever makes you happy, is idolized above all else, right? That is the most important thing. Do what you feel, do what makes you feel good. When you put this into marriage, and you can take Disney, or you can take rom-coms, or you can take whatever has kind of been systematically fed to you about what love and marriage are, but it becomes the self-actualization of you're choosing a spouse to make you happy. That's the primary grid through which you see the dating and selection process. And so the idea of soulmate, comes up, the idea of finding the one. comes up. And what it does is, as Keller says, it just puts a crushing burden on marriage, so that if you're relying on this one other person to make you happy, that will never work. And so many marriages now end in divorce. And so the perspective about marriage has been, this is a stupid institution. It will never make us happy. It will never fulfill us. So either let's cancel marriage and let's just live together, and if we stop getting along, we can just break up, or let's get married, but then if we want to get divorced, who cares? We'll just get divorced. So I can go 3, 4, 5 divorces and just keep going until I find the one who I really, love and will make me happy forever. So,
Or if you're a Christian and have grown up with the fundamental belief that divorce is not pleasing to the Lord, you still have, well, at least we did, that kind of idea that marriage is supposed to fulfill you, make you happy, meet your expectations, fill up your desires, all those things. But divorce isn't really an option. So it's a little bit of a different perspective than the world, but still with similar expectations to worldly marriage, which is what happened to us. Were you done? Should I jump in to this?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we were both believers, and we were really excited about marriage, and we would have said, we are not expecting marriage to make us happy, or like that's the purpose of marriage. We wouldn't have said that we thought that our happiness was the purpose of marriage, but we totally did think that, right? We did think that marriage was going to make us happy. We also thought that it would probably give us a constant companion, somebody to do everything with all the time. We thought it would fulfill our sexual desires. We were both not having sex before we got married, and so we were really excited to do that when we got married. And we also thought it would make our ministry stronger. I don't know if any of you have this idea. We're in a room full of, I assume, people who are following Jesus, and the idea that but together we can be so much stronger for the Lord. We can build the kingdom so much better together than apart. So we definitely thought that all of those things were going to happen. And they didn't. We got married and moved to Austin, Texas in 2009. So we're going on 12 years here this summer. And the first 2 to 2.5 years.
It just gets longer every time. I feel like normally it's 1.5 to 2, but lately.
Well,
it's
I have
2 to
memories
2.5.
sometimes of things that happened in year 3.
Let's just go year 3 then. 3 years were terrible.
Okay.
It was a while.
Somewhere between 1 and 3 years. It was kind of a blur. During those years, we realized, oh wow, our expectations for marriage are definitely not happening. We are way less happy than we were before.
Yeah.
Our sexual desire, our sex life is not what we thought it was going to be. Our ministry is 100% not stronger. It's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7 was definitely true for us when he's when you get married, you worry about things of the world, or things about, sorry.
No,
yes,
you're right.
that's what he says.
Yeah.
Things about the world and things in your marriage. You're worried how to please your spouse. That was true, and it totally distracted from our ministry. Basically, we got to the point where one day we're sitting in the car, and we didn't believe in divorce. So we were we're not going to get divorced, but I think if we move to different states and just live apart for the rest of our lives, that would be better. And we were dead serious. So we're just going to leave you there for a second. Clearly, we're still married, or we're still living together. So that didn't happen. It gets better.
It's we're living together and we're married.
And we're married. Both of those things.
I see what you're saying.
Both of those things.
Okay.
So we're going to come back to this story. But before we do, we want to ask you guys, just in one sentence, to tell us right now what you would say the purpose of marriage is. Not
It can be as Christian and cliche as you want.
Yeah,
No judgment.
or it can just be honestly just whatever you think. What do you actually think the purpose of marriage is?
There you go, Jesse. Good time to leave, man. I would do that too. Absolutely.
We will call on you by name if you don't say anything.
And you only know like
Somebody's talking. Who was
you
talking?
only know like 5 people's names.
Did you have an answer?
Yeah, that sounded like you were answering.
It
Did you
did.
think it was a table discussion, but then it got awkward because we all looked at you? I'm sorry about that. Okay, discuss with your table, but just loudly so we can all hear. Okay. Okay, discuss with your table for 45 seconds, and then we'll just ask for some answers. Go. What?
I love you.
I love you too. Okay. We're doing good. No, leave it for this. I think we're doing better on time than I thought. And we're kind of looking at like a 7:40. 7:40. You want to try to be done? 7:45. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, we're doing good. Alrighty then. So, randomly, any table got an answer? Anybody want to say anything? Oh yeah, that's not gonna work.
So biblically, in the purpose of marriage, representing Christ's relationship with the church, how they fail and constantly fail all of his expectations, he still faithful and loves them every possible turn.
It's great.
Even as Christians, we still fail, we still sin, we still not actually hate him, but
Sure.
still live by him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't pay us back. He says, no, I died for that sin too.
That's good stuff. We
good
can
stuff.
be done. We can leave.
No,
That's good.
we're not going to be done. Who else has an answer? That was really great, though. Thank you.
Emily has an answer.
Ben immediately felt bad about that.
Well, I mean, we discussed, but the answer we boiled it down to was an imperfect representation of the perfect relationship
Nice.
between Christ and his smoking hot bride.
You're talking about yourself. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
to make babies.
I think the analogy breaks down after a certain point. I think that might be that point. That's good stuff. Imperfect picture of a perfect relationship.
That's good.
That's really pretty. I like that. Anybody else got
You
anything
should
good?
you should write that down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like when God made Eve and like he told her like this is your helper. So I think like and it wasn't just like, oh you're gonna help me do stuff, it was kind of just like a person that's able to do things that he couldn't. Because man and female are so different. So I think the two of them coming together is, stronger and we're meant to be with other people too. Like God and Jesus is one too. So
Nice.
Yeah. Good connection to the Trinity there.
Yeah,
I like it.
Were you at service at 5? Nailed it. That's awesome. True. Okay, so agreed with all of those. I think that there is a multifaceted picture of the purpose of marriage that God has. We're going to talk about different aspects. So the first one is this idea of a covenant. Actually, I'm going to take that off so you stop staring at it. We'll get to that at the end. So quick biblical picture of marriage is Genesis. God creates Adam and Eve, he says, in the image of God. So he needed male and female to kind of represent what is truly in the Godhead. And brings them together in the covenant of marriage. Now, what we learn about, first of all, Adam and Eve sucked, all right? They fell, all right? Everything stunk after that. But specifically, when you're looking at the covenant of marriage, in the Old Testament, Moses and the law and the Israelites came to a point where Moses just said, if you wanted to divorce your wife, you could write a certificate of divorce, give it to your wife. Basically, it was like no fault divorce. And you could leave your wife. You could divorce your wife. Which is like a terrible picture of God's original. And so when Jesus comes, he's with his disciples, and his disciples are asking him about marriage, and the Pharisees are questioning him about marriage, about who's going to be married to who in the afterlife. Anyway, and Jesus says, basically just redefines or establishes, I guess, the picture for marriage when he tells them, like, you're supposed to be married for life. There's no reason you should be divorcing except for sexual immorality or sexual infidelity, whatever that is. And his disciples are so surprised at that. They say, wow, this is a really hard picture of what marriage is. You're telling me it's supposed to be more like the picture of God with Israel than it is this picture of Moses' people. If this is true, they say, what do they say? Why
get married at
Why
all?
get married? It's basically like,
Who will get married?
This is really the picture for marriage. Why should we get married? Is what the disciples are saying. So the picture of the covenant of marriage as God established it and wanted it is a revolutionary picture, right? No matter what culture you're fighting against, even to the culture of Moses and the theocracy of the Israelites. So there's that covenant piece, but no matter what, generally as humans, every culture takes that and makes it into a contract because a contract is easier. So I just put this up on the screen for you to kind of visualize. So a contract says something like, if you do your part, then I will do my part. And in marriage, that's a recipe for disaster. So the covenant is supposed to say, I'll do my part whether you do yours or not. The contract will say, what will it take to get this done? I'll do the minimum it will take, basically. The covenant says, whatever it takes, I will do. And again, when you're picturing the covenant, picture marriage, but then also picture God for you, right? God's love for you is the covenant love. Contract is, let's compromise. I'll meet you halfway. A covenant says, I'm going to sacrifice. I will go 100% for you. Even if you're giving 0%, I'll go 100. A contract, generally just even to get to the point where you have to sign a contract, it's based on suspicion, right, and obligation, forcing somebody into doing something, whereas a covenant is based on trust, and it seeks an opportunity to show and prove yourself and your love for the opposite person. So God's picture of marriage as a covenant is beautiful. It should, like you guys said, be that imperfect picture of God's perfect hesed, agape, loyal love for us that never changes and pursues us even when we whore after other idols, as Ezekiel would say, and other gods. So that's that piece.
And the part about this that's hard
Oh, sorry.
is that we aren't perfect, right? Are you throwing Ephesians 5 up there?
Yeah,
Is
but
that what
I
you're doing?
also forgot, sorry, that I was supposed to.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
We apologize a lot in marriage. It's a good thing.
It is.
Yeah,
It's
practice
really
it.
good.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. So we can't actually display this covenant love that God has shown us, right? Like, we're going to fail at that, and it's going to be really hard. But the idea of it is really beautiful. So when you go into marriage with this idea of like, we are going to reflect the love of God, and this is going to be amazing. And then your spouse doesn't reflect the love of God. And you're like, what is happening? Like, they are not reflecting God's love. And obviously you aren't really either.
But focus on your spouse. That's healthy. All right.
So Ephesians 5, is like the go-to passage on marriage in Scripture. So I know that you guys have read it and are probably familiar with it. We're not going to read the whole passage. It goes from like 22 to 33, I think. And this is, where it gets really practical. Like, husbands, love your wives, and wives, submit to your husbands. Some of those tough words in there that are hard for some women to read and talk about, which we can talk about later if that's a question you have. We're not going to go into depth on it, so you should write it down and we can talk about it later. But then Paul continues and he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. So as you were saying, what's your name in the back? John. Thank you, John. So just as John was saying, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. I don't have my glasses on, so I need to turn around. That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. This, again, is this really beautiful picture of marriage that doesn't actually play out with two sinful people very well. And so when we got married thinking like we're gonna rock this and we're gonna do this so well, and then we didn't. It brought me to this place of like, well, what do we do with this then? What is marriage actually supposed to be? And it started to transform my expectation of marriage, rather than something that's just going to be so like light and happy and beautiful and wonderful. No, this is like we're in the trenches, and it's for the sake of being made holy, so that we can reflect Jesus better, so that we can be a representation, a more accurate representation of Christ and the church. But the whole idea of that is that marriage is about holiness, not happiness. It's not about happiness. It's about holiness. It's about being made holy so that we can reflect Jesus. And the thing about being made holy is that you're refined by fire, right? It's hard. It means you're laying down your life. It means you are giving up your desires. It means you're acknowledging your sin and humbling yourself. It means that you're compromising what you want for the sake of the other. It means that you are not calling that person out. It means you're forgiving. Like all the things that Jesus does for us, that's what we're doing. And what Jesus did for us was literally die. And it was super painful. And he was rejected. And it was terrible. It wasn't easy. It was only beautiful after, right? And that's actually what marriage is about. Not that it's about like just deep suffering, but it's about being made holy, which is a beautiful, wonderful, joyful thing. But the process of it is really hard. There is a slide up here that I didn't even reference.
Well, you don't need to.
So there it is. You can look at it.
You already looked at it. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Do you want that quote?
What?
Do you want that quote?
The quote. Yes. The quote, the goal of marriage is not happiness, it's holiness. There's no mechanism whereby God can sanctify a person more than having them live in close proximity to another imperfect person. Our fundamental problem is that we are selfish. Marriage is the means whereby God eradicates our selfishness because it is not about me anymore, it's about we. And I would even, this is a really great quote, but I would even change that to like,
Good.
it's about.
Yeah, it's not about we.
It's about God.
He.
It's about he.
Yeah,
What's
up, Mark
That's
Patterson?
good.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So for us, we're going to get a little more into the nitty gritty about our expectations for marriage and what those looked like and how they weren't met. But I do want to speak into like how this process of being made holy and leaning in to that holiness and that process brought about resurrection and life on the other side, just as Jesus' death does, right? Like that is the picture that when he lays down his life, he's resurrected and he brings life and hope and joy and peace. And that's what happens when you lean into the holiness that God wants to work out in you through marriage. And that is honestly what saved our marriage, was Doug kind of like bowing down to the purpose of marriage that God had set in place for us and saying, you know, I'll lean in to being made holy. And so he started to lay down his life for me in a way that he hadn't up to that point, 2.5 years-ish in. And it completely transformed our marriage. Him making that gesture, which wasn't just one gesture, it was like a continual, daily giving up of his life and his desires and his hopes in order to love me as Christ loved the church, when I really wasn't deserving of it and I wasn't giving it back. Like I wasn't loving him well back. But he just continued to do that for me. And slowly, we started to find like, oh, we actually like each other and we want to hang out and our sex life is getting better and we actually love being married. And it became this beautiful, wonderful thing that's so life-giving, and it made our ministry stronger. And the expectations we had had before started to be met because we were focused on the Lord and what he wanted to do in us instead of on trying to make this the thing we wanted it to be.
Yeah, and genuinely, I love this part because it makes me sound awesome. In reality, it's like what is true of the eradication of sin in your life at probably any step, at least for me, which is that God has to bring you to the absolute end of yourself before you give up and surrender to him. And that's what it was. In our fighting, it was always me fighting for me. So she would say something in an argument or a fight, and I would get defensive and want to prove myself. And we had these really bad cycles where we would, our sin would just play into the other person's sin in the most harmful way. And it wasn't like I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be a good husband. One day it was like, I give up. So God, I know that you don't want us to get divorced, but there is literally, I feel like there's nothing else I can do. And God basically just saying, you haven't even tried to do this well. And so what that looked like for me and what it might look like for you, but the reason we have these talks hopefully is that you don't have to go to the end of your rope to do this, is me saying, okay, I can stop doing the job that I thought I was supposed to do, which was at that point ministry. We do not have to live here. We can live anywhere. We can live in your parents' house if you want. She wouldn't want that.
I did not want that.
But what I do, where I live, like all of those things that I had dreams and visions and ideas that were all me-centered and me-focused, it came to the end of my rope of being like, I'll give it all away if marriage can work. If that's what is gonna make it work. And so it wasn't like she said, it wasn't a beautiful process. It was a disgusting, messy, sinful process. And I don't want anybody else in this room to have to get to the absolute end of themselves to be like, fine, I'll give it all up to make marriage work. Like, I want you to be able to recognize your me-centeredness way before I did, and be ready to like kill that sin and die to that sin so that you can.
Well, and the remedy for this, like, I think we'll speak to this a little bit later, but it's not, let me lay it all down so that marriage can work. It's, which, is the point that Doug got to for our marriage. But what keeps your marriage healthy is like, let me lay it all down for the sake of the kingdom. Not even for the sake of my spouse, but like, I'm going to love my spouse because it honors the Lord. Not because I want to have this perfect marriage, but because I want to serve God well. And if that is our focus and that's where our heart is, then by default, your marriage becomes healthier and reflects Jesus better, because you're not actually focused on marriage. You're focused on the kingdom.
And it just took a long time to get there.
For us to learn that. Yeah.
Just slowly getting the lies out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to another expectation that wasn't
Okay,
met.
we got 10 minutes for the last two.
Okay, well, this one we can just go really quickly through because everyone's going to feel uncomfortable with it
But
anyway.
also, this is why everybody showed up. Sex.
To talk about, did you guys know we were going to talk about sex tonight?
Obviously. Yes.
We're really open. We do premarital counseling and get like into the nitty gritty stuff about sex with
Right?
our
Liam
couples.
knows. You know Liam, right? I'm just.
We didn't do their premarital, so they don't know. Just know that we're really open. If you guys have questions, if you don't want to ask them here, you can ask us later. If you want to ask them here, we will answer them. Maybe, probably. But we have seen, so we already talked about these verses. No, we didn't. We didn't talk about these verses. 1 Corinthians 7. Same chapter, though.
Yep.
Yeah. Where Paul just says, you guys, again, probably know these. It's good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. Okay.
No, the best part is
Okay,
right
I'm
after that.
sorry.
That's the part you want to get to.
I'm so sorry. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. So in marriage, right, you like the call on us in marriage is to meet each other's sexual needs and sexual desires as long as they're pure, right? Like that is the call for us in marriage. And so I think as Christians, if you are practicing what the Bible says and not having sex before you get married, then you have this really grand expectation of what sex is going to be like.
So grand.
When you
So
get married,
grand.
or
Yeah.
you're terrified because you have no idea, it just feels really scary. So it's one of those two things. Either
Or
you're
like a mix. Like
Or
you're
it's a
really
mix.
excited but also scared.
or it's
but
both.
Excited about it.
Yeah, it can be any of those. And so we want to recognize 3 dangers that we have seen deeply affect Christians in marriage, specifically Christians who are not engaging in sexual activity prior to marriage.
Yeah.
And we
First
just
one-
want to name them.
Yeah. First one is male involvement in porn and masturbation. So like pornography has obviously moved
And
from-
female, both
Sure.
male and female.
And female just happens to be obviously much more widespread among the males. But yes, thank you for that. So pornography has moved, from the back corner of the gas station, whatever, everywhere. So vast majority of guys have seen it or have interacted with it in some way. And when you're not having sex before marriage, especially, and you feel like, I don't know, from the age of 16 on, your hormones are raging, it becomes such an easy outlet. But as you become accustomed to, used to engaging in porn to like fill satisfaction, loneliness, abandonment, whatever you're looking to that for, the more engaged you are with that, the worse your expectations are of what God's picture of married sex are, because everything in pornography is lie. It's made to be a lie so that it's attractive, but it is a horrific lie that ruins your standards and expectations of sex. So as we've counseled people, that is obviously one of the biggest obstacles to healthy married sex under God's perspective, is that men who have struggled or women who have struggled with pornography come in with ridiculous and stupid expectations of what sex actually looks like.
Well, and it carries into marriage, like for years and years, because there are these pictures in your minds and even desires because of things that you've seen, that you've kind of gotten this idea of like, well, I want that because I've seen it and I think that is a real thing, and so I want that for myself. And then when your spouse doesn't meet that expectation, there's this poison,
Resentment
that gets in there.
Yeah, I forgot to say, that's part of our story. So that was my struggle. I was addicted to pornography in college, and then still struggled with it through seminary and even through years of marriage. And so that struggle just eats away at the foundation of the joy that is supposed to be sex. And obviously, having to tell your wife you've looked at pornography is obviously the worst conversation, but just puts so much insecurity or doubt or stuff that she shouldn't even have to deal with onto her, that weight onto her. Now, Lee is incredible, and so I forget at what point her perspective on that changed from I am a victim of this to I am a partner in fighting this with you. And so I forget how you describe the analogy, but kind of the soldiers.
Yeah, these are things that you can tuck away for when marriage comes for you guys. If you are in a marriage where either pornography has been a part of one of your stories or both of your stories, or is currently a part of both, at that time when you're married, when you're married, you're warriors for the kingdom of God, standing side by side, fighting together. And if the enemy is attacking your person, then what your job is to stand in front of them, not to attack them alongside of the enemy and to say, yeah, you hurt me, and accuse them, but rather to stand in front of them and say, no, we're going to fight this together. I'm going to fight for you against the enemy. And that shift in perspective, and that applies to any sin, right? Where we can feel victimized as the spouse or hurt by it, but we have to fight against that sin with our spouse instead of.
Yeah, and that goes back to that whole, if you're seeing it for holiness, and you want to fight for the holiness of that other person. If you're looking for happiness and that sin is making you unhappy, then you're going to wallow in your like discontent. So it's that shift of perspective as you're fighting for the holiness of the other person.
Yeah.
Sorry, we took longer than that one. You
Um,
really got to speed
It's
up.
good stuff. Okay, the second one is that, and we can fly through this one. Women have a lot of shame sometimes going into marriage regarding sex. For some reason, it is more shameful for women to talk about sex, to have struggled with masturbation or pornography, to even like there's, I think for a lot of Christian women too, there's this element of like, we have considered it so taboo for so long to like even envision impurity sexually, that when you get married, it is this like shameful thing, and it's really hard to enjoy sex and to allow yourself to have freedom in it because it's still tied to this shame.
Yeah, like your whole life's worth of getting used to it being like a shameful thing. Yeah.
And I didn't struggle with that particularly, but a lot of my friends did, and so the truth we just want to speak into you women and men, I don't know if this really affects men or not, but maybe, is that God did create sex to be enjoyed. And like that is bondage. If your fear or your shame is preventing you from having a healthy sex life with your spouse in the future in marriage, or to the two married couples in the room, that is bondage. That is Satan working against you, and that is not what God created your sex to be in your marriage. Like, it is supposed to be an enjoyment and a beautiful thing that brings life and connection and goodness to your marriage. And it took us a while to learn that as well because of both of those things. I don't think we need to talk about the third one.
Okay. So, quick question for you. You probably don't want to answer this out loud, but you can. How often do you expect to have sex once you're married?
You can just answer that in your head.
I don't know. I was kind of hoping somebody would say it out loud just to... All right. Nobody? All right, cool.
Somebody wants to say it out loud, right?
No.
How many times? No, okay.
Liam? No, Allie? Okay, cool. Just checking. Okay, cool.
So I took a little poll from a bunch of our friends, just because I told them, hey, we're doing this thing, and I want to be able to tell them, like, on average, how often people, like Christian couples, are actually having sex. Because I think a lot of us go into marriage thinking, like, we're going to have sex every day. Because before you're married, you want to have sex every day. And then that isn't actually the case, and you're like, what? So the poll results that I will share with you were that prior to kids, the average majority of people were having sex 2 to 3 times a week. Post kids, it's 1 to 2 times a week or less. And so we just wanted to speak that into you, because I think there are unrealistic expectations that are set because people don't talk about it, and they don't talk about their sex lives once they're married to the people who aren't married. And so we just want to speak that into you guys, of like all the Christian friends that we have. That's like the majority of them, the numbers that they shared.
That's good. Okay, moving on from sex. Sorry, guys. So the last one is just this idea that we hit on a little bit earlier. It's the verse in 1 Corinthians 7 that says, Paul saying, I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things and how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. As you should be, babe.
Did you want to keep going on?
Yeah.
These verses are very true, which we already said. And so really when you get married, you actually have to fight a lot harder to be focused on. What does the verse actually say? I can't read it.
The Lord.
The Lord. The things of the Lord.
The Lord.
instead of each other and the things of the world, because there's a lot of pressure put on married couples to like live into this ideal that is set in front of us, right? Like you guys all see it. You all see that there's this like picture of what your marriage is supposed to be and look like, and then you try to make it that when you get married, and your focus becomes on that. Like, I want to have a good marriage that reflects Jesus, and we're checking all the boxes and doing all the things. And all of a sudden, even if they're good things, it becomes about your marriage instead of about the kingdom. And that's really what this book is all about. And so I would just tell you guys, you can write this down. Both of these books are excellent, but when you get married, to read this, because it just resets that focus of like, marriage is about kingdom. And the way that your marriage is going to reflect Jesus the best, the way God intended it to, is if you are side by side fighting for the kingdom. We have a raised hand.
Oh.
Yes. You and Me Forever by Francis and Lisa Chan. And The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller with Kathy Keller. Do you like the little difference there?
Yeah.
It's funny. Did you get those? The Meaning of Marriage. And so this is just what we want to end with before we move into our question time, is that like this ideal that we all have of what marriage is and what it's going to look like and what it's going to be. Like, our ideal should be standing before Jesus in eternity. And like that picture should drive everything that we do, whether we're single or married. And when you get married, it's easy for that goal of standing before Jesus, ready to meet him, doing everything that we have been able to do to faithfully serve him. We get distracted from that goal in marriage quite often, even in the church, maybe sometimes especially in the church. And so remembering that, like, whether you're single or married, you're running to reach the prize. And that prize is not a healthy marriage. That prize is Jesus himself and being in his presence. So we want to end with that.
That's great.
Do you want to pray, and then should we
just go straight into
questions?
So take a second if you have any to write questions down. If you don't, that's too bad. We're just going to look at each other for the last.
We have some like in the back pocket, so if you don't have questions, we can just answer ones that you don't care to hear the answers to. But we'd rather answer ones that you care about. So take a couple minutes. We'll give you some time, write them down, and then Amy will come and collect them. They'll be anonymous. We don't need to know who asked the question. Amy will bring them up to us.
You should probably just take a couple pieces out and then you can write nothing on them, but
Yes, there's those little Post-it notes on your tables. That's what those are for.
That way it's actually anonymous and we don't get two and then just, yeah. Okay, so. Yeah.
It's not the right session because this is kind of more about the single but like as a single person, maybe looking for help or advice, would it be better to get it from someone who's dating or married? Because you probably wouldn't want to get advice from somebody else who was also single.
Other single people? Yeah, I think that's better. I think it's a good call. I would get it from a married person.
Okay.
Yeah. If you could find any married people at your table that you think that you like or don't like, yeah, that's up to you. Yeah. Are there any of these that you want to make sure and hit? No, I was asking you if there's any. Oh, yeah, we can do that one. Yeah, what's up, Jesse? You're going to ask your question out loud? Proud of you. Go for it. It's anonymous, guys. Don't pay attention. Go ahead.
Biggest pet peeve.
That's great. So.
Like in marriage or just in general?
Oh, it's got to be in marriage. That'd be more fun. Tell them about me. So,
Doug doesn't
many
annoy
years?
me ever, so I don't have any.
how many years in was it? I'm trying to remember how many years. Lee is one of our biggest struggles early in marriage was we came in with totally different ideas of how to handle conflict. She grew up in a home where they just spoke their conflict out loud and kind of not like overly raised voices, but were fine with emotions. And just, they fought in front of each other and then they worked it out in front of each other. And my family never had conflict. I didn't know my mom and dad ever disagreed on anything because I found out 20 years later that anytime they had a disagreement, it was behind closed doors when the kids were not around. So I did not know healthy conflict. Part of why I broke up with girlfriends whenever we started to have conflict, because I was like, this isn't what a relationship's supposed to be. It's supposed to be perfect. So in marriage, we had conflict. So she was very good at speaking her annoyance or pet peeves to me, except for this one time where I came home to my closet and she had taped a piece of paper on my closet door that said, things that you should do. And it was a list of like 9 to 10 things that were really ticking her off that I just continued to do, even after she had at points in the past verbally said that she wasn't. So a lot of it was about cleanliness, picking up my clothes, moving my dirty clothes from the floor into the hamper, which, by the way, they're on the floor because I might wear them again, but I'm not sure. I mean, come on. Come on, it's not like I missed the hamper and then was too lazy. It's like, I'm going to smell that in 2 days, and if it's okay, I'm going to put it on. All that aside, to say, I have made her mad in a lot of ways. She rarely makes me frustrated.
There are some great questions here, so we're gonna start answering them so that we can
Yeah, go.
get to them.
Go.
So first, let's do this.
'Kay.
What made us decide to commit to each other? What was it about the other person that made you want to? Which I think, I think that this is, we could make this question broader and like, how do you know when it's time to commit to somebody? Like, how do you know when you found the person that you want to marry? And my short answer to this is just like pray.
Classic Lee answer, by the way.
What else can you do?
I'll tell you. I have a specific 5-step process. I'm just kidding. No, I don't.
So I will tell you, for us specifically, what drew me to Doug was
My body. So anyway.
clearly, it was his ministry, like the way that he interacted with students, the way that he just like by magnetizing people to himself, he magnetized them to Jesus. And watching that and being a part of that was something that was so attractive to me. Like, I wanted him to be my partner in ministry because, like I already told you, I thought he will make my ministry better. And so that is what drew me to him. But then there were definitely times before we got married that I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the person I'm supposed to marry. Like, that's forever. This is a big deal. There are other guys I think are awesome and cute. Like,
Okay.
what?
First time I'm hearing this.
So that question of how do you know, like, I would just tell you again and again, like, sometimes you just make a decision. Like, that is part of it, is that you decide to commit to somebody and make that covenant, trusting that God is going to make it beautiful in its time. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and that person doesn't have to be perfect. There are some essentials, right, that you should look for, like make sure they're following Jesus, because your marriage isn't going to reflect Jesus if they're not following Jesus. But also just pray and ask him for direction. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that I messed up. I thought, like,
Yeah.
did I mishear you? Like, when I prayed and asked you specifically to tell me if Doug was the person I was supposed to marry, and I felt like you said yes, was I wrong? Did I hear you wrong? Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of questioning.
I've had I've had multiple lunches sitting across the table from guys early in marriage that have been like, I thought God told me yes, and this can't be right. I had to have misheard God. And to walk them through that process of God doesn't make mistakes, okay? Even if you think you heard him wrong, he's sovereign, and he this is what is chosen for you. So you need to figure out what he's trying to teach you through it, and don't like just abort by trying to leave this marriage. So to answer that same question from my perspective, in Lee, what differentiated her from all of the other girls was our ease in having spiritual conversations, her centeredness on the Lord above all else. So we were able to pray together, memorize scripture together, have conversations about ministry and life, but she just easily talked about God. Other times I'd be like, I'm going to go to church with this girl. Afterwards, we're going to talk about the sermon. I have these plans I'm going to really try. We're going to make this relationship spiritually grounded. But it was such work, and it was so awkward. And with Lee, it was just like, this is what God told me today, and blah, blah. And I was like, wow, this is so easy. This is the best. So I knew early on, that's what made me immediately be like, all right, if I can marry her, I'm going to marry her. This is awesome. And what I tell people on this side of marriage is, I get a little nervous saying this, but I really do believe it. Don't overthink it. Like, you might have a list of 15 things that you want in a spouse. Cool, great for you. Do not hold that up to another man and say, if you don't meet all 15 of these, it's not going to work. What I tell boys that I have mentored who are worried about like committing to a girl to marry her is, does she love Jesus? That's all that matters. Because on the other side of marriage, your sexual and physical attraction is going to wax and wane. Your chemistry is going to wax and wane. Your communication is going to wax and wane. Your hobbies are going to wax and wane. All that is going to change. All that's going to grow. And if that person is not growing through Jesus and into Jesus more and more, your marriage is going to be insanely difficult. If that person is connected to Jesus and growing in Jesus, your marriage is going to be so much easier. And so just stop overanalyzing, marry somebody who loves the Lord, and you know that, and your life will be great. I mean, think about the people who don't even meet their spouse before they get married in other parts of the world, and they make marriage work, Anyway, don't think about that if that.
Clearly, Doug has some passion around it.
I do think that we have made it into this insane ordeal of trying to find the perfect person. That person, as Tim Keller says in here, will change 1,000,000 times before you die. Mm-hmm. What they love when you get married will absolutely change. That person, their personality, the way they interact, their love languages, that will all change. Find somebody who loves Jesus and go for it.
That's good. The second part of this question kind of ties to another question. Joys of marriage that we've encountered. And then this question is so good, and I'm so glad that somebody asked it. Are holiness and happiness mutually exclusive?
Hey-yo.
And we intended to speak into this, and so I'm sorry that we didn't, and glad that whoever asked this question asked it. No, that's the most beautiful thing is the deepest kind of happiness comes when you are being made more holy. And so when you lean into that and you allow God to do that work in you, and your spouse allows God to do that work in them, actually the happiness on the other side of that, that's that resurrected life. It's a happiness that you didn't actually expect because you didn't know what it was going to be like. And it's not a happiness of marriage is fulfilling me. It's this happiness of Christ is fulfilling me, and I get to be made more like him through this iron sharpening iron thing. And so, no, holiness and happiness are not mutually exclusive. Rather, holiness makes happiness deeper, I think. And then the joys specifically of marriage that we have encountered, and joys that we maybe didn't expect but have found. I think it.
That's a great question.
Yeah, there are so many joys, and now I don't know. I don't have a specific.
This is going to be maybe sound cheesy, but the bonding of two souls at that level of, and it takes time. It took us time to feel, obviously, we didn't feel bound together in the first couple of years, but to feel like I know what she's thinking at all times, to know when we leave a movie or a sermon or something. I'm sorry that I just compared those two. Now I feel guilty. To talk about what we thought about what we thought about it, to know ahead of time basically what she's going to say, what she liked, what she disliked, to feel like you're that intimately connected to another soul is a joy that I didn't expect and had never experienced before, even in my deepest friendship with males. So
There's this quote in The Meaning of Marriage on page 101. I actually asked Doug to put this quote in the slides, but he
Put the
thought
wrong quote in.
he thought I
Whatever.
was talking about a different one. So I don't know actually what exactly it says, but it's something like you can compare the love in marriage to like when you're starting out and there's that infatuation and you're so excited and like the initial spark of love in the relationship, sometimes even into the first couple years of marriage, like that is kind of like a babbling brook, you know, like it's happy and it's excited and it's moving quickly. And but like the love that grows in time with marriage is like a deep river, and it looks more still, but it's deeper and it holds more and it's stronger. And I think that we have found that to be really true, that over the course of 12 years, and I hope that this will be true 40 years from now, we'll be saying, remember when we had only been married 12 years? Like we didn't know anything about the depth of love that we could have. But it's this love that's not like mushy gushy. It's not like I get butterflies. It's not like we're excited to make out with each other. Like,
Wow, two things I'm just learning, but that's fine, whatever.
he already knew those things. But there's this like deep love that is more, it feels more like God's love. Like I feel like I understand God's love better because of it.
All right.
So
good
that's a
stuff.
joy.
There's more questions. That's
Okay.
Great. That was great. Was going from single to marriage hard? What was the adjustment process like? First of all, yes, it always is. Second of all, the longer you are ensconced in your singleness, we have found the harder the adjustment is, because you're just accustomed to life and yourself being the center of your schedule and your decisions and your finances, and everything is about you because that's the only person you're planning for. So yes, our adjustment was especially hard because intelligently we only dated long distance, and we didn't date that long, so we didn't live in the same town at any point in our dating relationship. So getting married, moving to a new town, and living in the same house was a tornado of newness, and we did not do well with it. So the main adjustment, I would say, for any person, and that we sucked at the worst, was reorienting your life to be about loving this person instead of loving this person. And so I sucked for a long time about communicating, because I didn't need to communicate when I was single. I would just, after work, I would go out to dinner where I would hang out with people. And so calling her, texting her, letting her know, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What about we do this? That didn't happen. That just did not happen. And so there were times where I would come home and she would be absolutely furious with me. And it took me a while to realize that she should have been absolutely furious with me, because I was just being an idiot. I was living like a single person instead of a married person. But that was the hardest adjustment for me.
Yeah, I think this can go to really practical things. Like you probably already know, like, yeah, the way that you live your life changes completely when you get married. And so unless you're, living in the same town and dating each other and doing a lot of life together. But even then, like when you move into the same house, things like the laundry and the hamper, like those are real things that affect your daily life that you have to adjust to.
What would you say? What would you say?
What?
Hardest adjustment from single to married?
Good question.
And we did the long distance too.
You have 3 seconds.
Just the schedules, like
Balancing two schedules.
My desires versus her desires.
Yeah.
Going to bed early.
A very specific part of the schedule balancing. That was bad for us too. That was one of our
So
roughest.
actually, I was gonna say that like this ties into the joy too that I didn't expect, was that one of the hardest things in the beginning was like our schedules are so different, right? I'm an early bird, he's a night owl, so he wanted to stay up late, and I was like, you're not gonna come to bed with me at the same time? Like good Christian couples go to bed at the same time. And then you're not gonna wake up early with me and do devos? Like that's what good Christian couples do. And so it was this hard adjustment of like, what I thought this was going to look different. I thought you were going to fit into what I do, and actually the joy wasn't in either of us like fitting into what the other person was doing, but rather in us embracing what the other person needed. So like me realizing, oh, it's actually really good for Doug to have that time after I go to bed. Like that's his time to kind of detox from the day, and he needs that time. And I actually like prefer to do my devos in the morning by myself without him there. And so this is actually a joy to embrace his difference, rather than expecting him to become the same as me. Yeah.
That's great. You want to do marks of a healthy sex life before we end?
What
Just a
marks a
great way to
healthy
close.
versus an unhealthy sex
Yeah,
life?
what marks a healthy versus unhealthy sex life? And I think this is
And a single guy asked this question, which is so great.
signed it a single guy. That's
I
I
like it.
appreciate that. Thank you, Spencer. So, I would say this is pretty easy. I say this is pretty easy. I hope.
I'm glad you think it's easy. I
Yeah.
was like, how are we going to answer this?
The key to the healthy sex life is that it is a communicated desire between you two that you are not letting any of the rest of the world determine. So even as she gives you the stats of the typical Christian couple, I have fear that you are going to take that and use that as your blueprint. When in reality, your sex life should be figuring out your sexual desires and needs together, communicating about that openly, and then living into it. And it is not comparing. It is not looking to the outside world for ideas or expectations. So that marks a healthy sex life. If a couple is like, yes, we have sex X amount of times, and we're both very happy with our sex life. We've communicated about it, and this is what works for us. I'm like, great, healthy sex life. Otherwise, every marker is subjective and perfect.
Yeah, like it's not just, oh, those people have sex 5 times a week, so they have a healthy sex life, which is totally what I used to think. It is exactly what you're saying. Thank you
Yep.
for having a good answer for that. And I think that actually those verses that we read really speak into it. Like you're meeting the needs of your spouse. And that is what marks the healthy sex life. Like if you are meeting the needs of your spouse, and that requires communication. Sometimes it requires laying down your life because you're tired or you don't want to, but you're going to meet your spouse's needs because that's what we're called to do in marriage. And not just like, ugh, but when there's joy in it.
Which
and
you've never made that sound when I've asked you if you want to have sex.
never. Yeah. I don't think we need to say
Did
more.
I throw
on
you
that.
off there? Okay, cool. Great. Okay.
There are other really good
Yeah,
questions here.
but
I'm
we're
sorry
at-
that we
yeah.
didn't get to them.
Yeah. Thanks for asking questions and for entering in. Do you want to leave with this quote, or should we just pray?
No, that's just so much
Okay,
better.
Cool.
To-
We're just going to leave that up there. Let's just pray. Okay. Yeah, pray with us, please. God, I pray for the single people in this room. Father, I pray that as they desire marriage, as they look to marriage, God, will you just set their expectations correctly? Will you give them the picture of marriage that you had from the foundation of the world when you created Adam and Eve and you blessed that covenant and you made two become one? I just pray that those biblical and godly expectations would be in front of their eyes so that they cannot see the unrealistic and stupid expectations of the world. Father, will you implant in them a desire to love you and pursue you first and foremost? And may marriage never take that throne, and may the idea of a spouse or somebody that they love take that place. And so, God, I pray that over the single people in the room, for the married people in the room, ourselves included, God, would you continue to knit us together as the 3-stranded rope with you as a 3rd strand, so that you are interwoven into every aspect of our marriage, and so that we are bringing you glory and honor and the picture to the world of Christ loving the church. And so we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.